Okay, why is nothing showing on my screen? Let me check the code base. Wait though, did my laptop just crash? Okay, I've just restarted the project. Wait, did it crash again? What's up YouTube? So today, I'm going to be using every single React hook that exists in React to build an app, but not just any app. I'll be building a to-do app. Yeah, a freaking to-do app. The one app that every developer makes at least once in their life. Now, if I've used React before, but I have no idea what React hooks are, don't worry, this video explains it in the simplest way possible. But honestly, I don't know how this will turn out. Would it all work out, or would I go insane? Only one way to find out. So to commence our journey of no return, I started by installing Vite with React, because I think that's the only way to use React. Then I added Tailwind CSS, because I'm not trying to torture myself with plain CSS. I initialized Git, created a basic to-do app, styled it using Tailwind, and committed it. Done. Right now, I've already used the React hook, useState. Let me check that one off my list. So to all my non-React friends, what useState essentially does is that it acts as a memory for all to-dos. A storage, you could say. When I type a to-do and add it, it gets stored in my useState hook. But the issue with this is that once I refresh my page, all my to-dos disappear. Oh no, my to-dos! And one of the features of a to-do app is, when you add a to-do, you should be able to come back and meet it's still there. Meaning that if I'm to make a real to-do app, I need to fix that. Clap your hands, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all human of every gender. Allow me to introduce to you useEffect, the one and only, the myth and the legend, the one that single-handedly fixed this issue for me. Yeah, it's useEffect. How this piece of magic works is that it keeps an eye for any change that essentially happens in your app. Maybe someone adds a new to-do, or someone decides to not text you back. useEffect takes notice of them all, and it doesn't just stop at noticing them, it does something about it. It's basically that one guy that threatens you by saying,
I dare you to step over this line. Okay, almost.
So how I added useEffect to my app was that I made it monitor the useState data. So if a new to-do gets added to the to-do arrays in the useState, it takes that to-do array and saves it to the browser's local storage automatically. Done. Simple. I totally didn't spend 2 hours working on it. Damn. If I'm already struggling with just useEffect, what will now happen when I'm not working with the more weirder React hooks? So now that the app can remember to-dos even after you refresh the page, let's move over to our next React hook, useRef. Now there are multiple ways I can use the useRef hook in this app. For example, showing how many times I've clicked on something, or storing a particular information even after the app changes. Why is that the case? Well, it's because useRef acts as a little secret notepad for your app, where everything that happens in your app gets tracked there without showing anything to you. You might be wondering, aren't useEffect and useRef almost the same thing? Emphasis on the word almost. Man, all React hooks are technically almost the same depending on how you look at them. But just don't look at them in a weird way. They get creeped out easily. Trust me, I would know. So for our glorious to-do app, I've decided to use useRef to make the cursor automatically jump back to the input field after a to-do gets added. And yes, there are other ways of doing that. I don't necessarily have to use useRef. And to that, I'll say, yes, you're right. But I'm trying to build a to-do app with only 15 React hooks. All 15 React hooks. Now we have added useState, useEffect, and useRef. Let's introduce a new hook to the mix, useContext. To showcase the ability of useContext in my little app, I had to turn the app into multiple components. Because the entire purpose of useContext is to share data with multiple components. It's just like passing props from parents to children. But with useContext, you can access the parents or global data from anywhere in your app. Moving on, useReducer. This low-key sounds like a supervillain's name. I am useReducer. It sounded better in my head. useReducer is very useful when you have complex logics for different states of a component in your app. Imagine having an if-else condition for more than 100 semi-related cases. That's just like imagining hell. But that's where useReducer comes in. It's like that angel that helps you stop imagining that. I'm sure you're sure that my basic to-do app hasn't reached that level of complexity yet. So how and where do I add useReducer? Well, who said anything about overengineering? I scoped out all useState from handling it to do state logic and replaced it with useReducer. Because I'm that bad. So now, useState is only for inputting to-do items. Alright, onwards to the next React hook, useMemo. useMemo is used to save memory and time. Just like the name, useMemo, memory. Don't you not see the correlation? Okay, I'm not sure if that's how they came up with the name, but that's what useMemo does. It's used where we compute derived data that is manipulated. What this basically means is that David computer get all viewer data. Data is then used to find how many viewers subscribe. Every time David refresh computer, computer repeats this process. Computer take RAM and time because viewer data big. David puts process in useMemo. Now, if David refresh computer, computer not take RAM and time. Because computer already had results from former calculation. You get the gist basically. So to use this in my app where there's little to no data manipulation at all, I decided to introduce a count to my to-do list component. Just look at how beautiful this block of code is. Now let's move on to the next subject matter. Use callback hook. Use callback hook is just an extension of the useMemo hook, but is instead used to memorize functions that are passed as props or are used inside components to avoid unnecessary recreations on every render. So to see it in action, check out the toggle to do and remove to do in the to do list component and the add to do in the to do input component. useLayoutEffect. This sounds oddly like useEffect. I wonder why. useLayoutEffect is used to make adjustments to the DOM before the UI gets shown on the screen with the goal of avoiding flickers or layout shifts. And I know you must be wondering, flickers? Layout shifts? What? Let me give you a little example of useLayoutEffect in action. A tooltip component uses useLayoutEffect to measure its own dimensions and the positions of its target elements immediately after a render, but before the UI gets displayed on the screen to the user, allowing synchronous updates to the tooltip state with the correct top and left CSS properties, making sure that the tooltip appears in its final and correct position to avoid any unnecessary UI breaks. So I'll be adding the useLayoutEffect in the app to scroll to the bottom of the to-do list component before it gets displayed on the screen and after a to-do gets added. By the way, I had to accompany this implementation with a useRef. Now let's move on to our next hook, useImperativeHandle. Can someone say useImperativeHandle? I can't hear you! What useImperativeHandle does is that it lets you control what and what method or properties a parent component app.jsx can access from its children, to-do list and to-do input. The goal of this hook is to keep the child's component's internals private and to promote better encapsulation. So for the to-do, I'm using it with forward-ref to expose custom methods such as focus input and clear input from the child's component to the input to its parent's component app.jsx. Now it's time for useId. This React hook is by far the most simplest among the others. So what it does is that it generates unique IDs for things like form elements, labels, things like that. It's perfect for associating the input field with a label tag without hard coding any unique ID. So let's go ahead and add a label to our to-do input component and use it to generate an ID. And without passengers, we have just switched the stop sign. Put your hands up in the air, take out every form of expensive jewelries or items you own, like your iPhones or iLaptops, and hand it over to the man on the max walking through the aisle. Hey, I'm just joking. But that could happen. You don't know how tomorrow might turn out. So make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel right now. And always remember that you can always count on Jesus. If he could protect the Israelites from Pharaoh, he can definitely protect us now. Alright, enough of this precious stuff. React hooks. useTransition. It helps you mark a state update as non-urgent, so as to allow other important state updates to be handled first in your app. The goal is to keep your app responsive 24/7, no dulling, no freezing. I've added useTransition to the app. Try squinting your eye a little bit. Do you notice the pending in the add button elements? It should be more noticeable in bigger apps that contain a lot more changing states at the same time. But as you guys know, I'm building a freaking to-do app. useDeferredValue. Now we're entering into the territory of questionable React hooks. useDeferredValue lets you delay updating a value on the screen, maybe due to how large of a file you're fetching to be rendered. With the help of this hook, your user interface can still be interactive during this expensive render. Now how are we going to implement this weird little hook into our app? Well, we are going to use it to make the search or filter experience smooth while typing. Now let me add a search box inside the to-do list component that uses the useDeferredValue hook. Now if I type rapidly, the input field stays responsive. Moving on to the useSync external store. That was a mouthful. This hook is great for cross-tab sync or subscribing to external data sources like browser APIs or WebSockets connection. If you have worked with Firebase before, you easily understand what this hook does. So for my elegant implementation of this, I created an external store that listens to the browser storage event for any cross-tab updates. This is already getting complicated. So if an action is triggered during the listening of the external store, then a follow action is triggered, which is to update the to-do. Okay guys, I think I just ran into a bug. Whenever I add a to-do to the app in one tab, it takes forever for the app in the other tab to sync. So that begs the question, do I spend 2 hours of my life trying to get this to work well, or do I move on? Kindly place your answers in the comments. And the right answer was, David moved on! I always knew David was a smart guy. Time is money. Oh, blimey mate, while in fact I do support your point. Time is money. I don't see David getting paid for this video. useDebugValue. useDebugValue. Not to be confused with useDeferredValue. useDebugValue hooks helps you debug custom hooks by displaying a label for them in the React Dev Tool component section. Do I know why this is important? No. Do I care? Also no. So to add this into our app, I created a small custom hook called useFilterTodo that does the filtering like before, and it uses the useDebugValue hook that shows both a readable label and a formatted object that you can inspect in the DevTools. And that's it right there. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. Since I've stayed to this point, I have 3 gifts for you. 1. My gratitude for coming this far. 2. Equally my gratitude again for the second time for subbing to the channel for those who did. And if you haven't, come on, don't you know want my gratitude? And the final gift is God loves you. Never forget that. Thanks for watching.